Go. You know, the right to demand all the money back now. So.
Did you eat it?
I wolfed it down pretty fast.
Eating for you too. Next year, you're gonna be really jealous.
That's my.
This is the real.
So nobody wants to watch me eat a burrito.
Do that. I got a granola and then I do fruit and with honey on top.
Is it, we just finishing because of the.
That part is really addicting.
Mm-hmm. That's it. Is it? Okay. Next time.
Only one more.
I'm arguing it. Jacob, they're arguing. Okay, then we're here.
Yeah.
Oh.
You know, that remedy. I wanted to.
This, yeah, it came from my pop bottle returns anyway. It's all your money.
Right, smack that gavel.
You know, dough.
It's authority, yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah.
It's about 12:56. I'm only about 2.5 hours behind schedule, but make up for it here, I'm sure. This is a meeting of the Planning and Policy Committee, and want to thank everyone for being here. And we will begin with public comment. Anyone who has public comment, please feel free to come forward. You have 3 minutes to share your thoughts. Just give us your name and your residence, town or township you live in.
All right. Good morning, Chairperson Jim Barry, Vice Chairperson Jordan Jortsma, and County Commissioners. My name is Oliver Champagne. I reside at 540 D Avenue, Apartment 5, Grand Haven. I'm a senior at Grand Valley State University studying public and nonprofit administration and sociology. Mr. Houtman was supposed to be, or Houtman was supposed to be here today, and he often speaks of the triple bottom line: people, planet, prosperity. But whose prosperity? Consumers Energy is asking this board to let them bury their liability in our soil because it is the cheapest option for their shareholders. Many of you have fought to keep the J.H. Campbell plant open for reliability. If you care about this plant's role in our community's future, you must also care about the long-term integrity of the land it sits on. 7 of our townships, Grand Haven, Port Sheldon, Robinson, Park, Olive, Blendon, and Georgetown, are already exploring a locally controlled cooperative because they are tired of outside utilities making decisions for Ottawa County. This is about local control. Do not let Consumers Energy turn our lakeshore into a permanent disposal site. Mr. Capalla will likely call this a routine closing activity, but injecting coal ash leachate loaded with arsenic and selenium, I can't say that word right now, into the ground is not cleaning. It is hiding. Even at non-hazardous levels, arsenic is regulated in drinking water because it is toxic over time. And notably, the plant is currently under a Department of Energy emergency order to remain open through May 18th, which raises an obvious question about why permanent disposal permits are being rushed right now. I ask you to put a direct question to Mr. Capalla. Are these wells the lowest cost option being pursued simply to satisfy state regulators? And how have they been accounted for potential aquifer migration toward Lake Michigan? The entire system depends on a confining layer, the rock meant to keep injected waste from migrating into drinking water. The EPA has not verified this layer using local logs, actual core samples from the Campbell site at the exact injection depth. Instead, the permit relies on regional extrapolation, data pulled from miles away. So if Mr. Capalla disputes that, press him on it. Eagle and MSU researchers have confirmed that the Marshall Aquifer is being depleted and experiencing rising chloride levels. Your own groundwater board discussed this crisis just yesterday. Adding a high-pressure waste injection well is not a routine step. It is an unnecessary gamble with infrastructure this county cannot replace. Consider what is happening right now on the other side of this building. Ottawa County is actively leveraging public resources to help farmers permanently protect their land through the Development Rights Program, but protected farmland without clean groundwater is worthless. The farms you are working to preserve depend on the same aquifer you would be putting at risk. You met on April 1st to build that agricultural legacy. Do not let Consumers Energy undermine it for their bottom line. If these wells fail, the cleanup costs will not fall on Consumers Energy's executive leadership. They will fall on the taxpayers of Ottawa County. This is the private liability being offloaded onto public risk. I ask this committee to recommend that the full board pass a resolution formally opposing these EPA permits, as you did with the 2025 resolution to delay that plant's closure. Demand a hydrological survey independent of the utility. Tell Consumers Energy if they want to restore our grid, they should not start by potentially poisoning our water. Protect our local sovereignty. Deny these wells. Thank you. For those who have ears, may you hear me. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else for public comment? Welcome, Ms. Obitz.
Hello, Karen Obitz, Spring Lake. So in the past approximate week or so, I have learned way more about what two deep injection wells would be, why it's being requested, than I ever knew about that sort of thing before in my life. As well, I know that what I have learned has convinced me that it would be very important for many more Ottawa County residents to have the opportunity to learn as much as I have and hopefully more. So I'm asking that this board, also as Mr. Champagne just recommended, that you put before the full board, this committee put before the full board a resolution that requests the EPA to hold a formal public hearing so that others of our residents could have the same opportunity I've availed for myself on my own time, to make sure that everyone is keenly aware of what the ramifications of this would be and the reasons for why it's being requested now. And may I just add that this Board of Commissioners had no qualms about passing a resolution not terribly long ago with respect to whether consumers should or should not, or whether the grid people names and acronyms are escaping me right now, but I think you know what I'm talking about. That we at least have that looked at again, whether or not we could safely close consumers in terms of our grid and electricity needs. So if you've been willing to speak to anything related to this element of your oversight with respect to Ottawa County, I ask that you do the same thing now and pass a resolution requesting EPA to hold a public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Chantal Martineau, Park Township. I would just like to echo what both Karen Obitz and Oliver Champagne said, to request you to pass along to the full board of a recommendation to pass a resolution for a public hearing with the EPA about the proposed wells. I think we all value the Great Lakes tremendously. You guys just had a 45-minute meeting about the Parks Department, which, as somebody pointed out, is very heavily focused, weighted towards the lakeshore side of the county. And we all know what a wonderful resource we have in Lake Michigan and the Great Lakes, which I probably don't need to remind you, contain 20% of the fresh water on the globe. So I think it's really important that we protect that freshwater resource. And like Karen, I don't really know a whole lot about all the details of what's at stake here, but I am very concerned, and I think a public hearing would really help the public to become more aware of the issues at stake and to motivate people to take action and make their opinions known. Speaking of which, I think that you probably would be hearing from more of the public today. And I have also heard that consumers is not actually showing up today because this meeting is 2 hours behind schedule. So I would like to urge you to make more realistic times for your meeting notices. I think this is the first meeting that has ever been scheduled for the Finance Committee that was 15 minutes long. And it seems like you had some pretty serious things to discuss at that meeting. And so that was, you're really wasting the time of everyone concerned with the issues at hand when you do not appropriately schedule your meetings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if I quickly give some of you a copy? Okay, perfect. It's a little longer. Whoever wants, I don't have enough for you guys, sorry. Have a good day again. Sorry.
Mr. Zimmer.
Dan Zimmer, Port Sheldon Township. The apex of fly ash leachate is front and center. The injection well permit prompted some online research. Currently, the leachate that is collected from lined landfill cells is diluted in facility process water, and that mix is discharged in Lake Michigan. Indications are this practice has occurred for 30 years or more. Doesn't seem very environmental friendly or responsible. If plant remains open, Lake Michigan dumping continues until alternate method is found. Remember, consumers' first choice was to lake dump. and now seeks injection well disposal. If facility closes, the process water from the facility will no longer facilitate lake dumping disposal method. Consumers Energy information states seeking permission to discharge up to 400 gallons per minute or less at any given time. 24,000 gallons an hour, 10 hours run time, 240,000 gallons. For scale, an Olympic-sized swimming pool holds approximately 660,000 gallons. In any event, a public hearing is needed to fact-check consumer energy information before the EPA. Question the choices made. Evaluate those choices made outside of the corporate agenda, the corporate boardroom, by industry insiders. To articulate the reasons for public hearing far exceeds the 3 minutes allowed to do so. Consumers Energy can say they will hold a public hearing, but per the EPA notice, comments and requests for public hearing must be submitted in writing and are not the product of Consumers Energy promises or intentions. To date, Consumers Energy hearing request does not appear on EPA tracking website. Just saying, talk is cheap.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Becky Patrick, Allendale. I'm here to comment on your discussion item regarding Consumers Energy's application to US EPA and Eagle for injection well waste disposal permits at the Campbell plant. I'd like to offer two general comments for your consideration. First, as I indicated in an email to you last week, I would like this board, or the board, to formally request US EPA to conduct a public hearing on these permits. The potential of these wells to affect our already troubled groundwater, as well as Lake Michigan, means that a public hearing is really not optional in a situation such as this. An action of the entire Board of Commissioners to do all within its power to ensure that this is a transparent and participatory process would demonstrate your leadership and commitment to those values. You really do carry the most weight of any entity involved, and I can tell you this from personal experience, having worked in environmental regulation for 30 years. Your action to request a public hearing would almost surely result in EPA's decision to hold such a hearing. I realize that Consumers has now indicated that they intend to request a public hearing as well. However, I would offer that your action on this matter should be independent of whatever Consumers decides to do or not do, since you represent us. Consumers does not. Second, as you consider how best to advocate for the county, its health, and our water resources, keep in mind that you will likely hear what I consider to be some pretty blanket assertions that these injection wells are safe. Please remember, such claims of safety are based primarily on lots and lots of modeling and assumptions, not direct observation of how well systems, geology, and waste will interact and behave in the short term, and the long term, and the very, very long term. You will hear that there are a number of injection wells sited along the Great Lakes operating without problems. Answers like these do not address the facts that we can easily find many examples of injection wells gone wrong that I don't have time to list for you in a public comment. And there's some in this state. Such answers also don't address this truth, that the primary concern with injection wells is that we don't know whether or not there's something to worry about, because no one knows how the plumes in those wells are behaving and whether they are staying where they're supposed to stay, because there is no requirement to monitor them. Again, these permits are based primarily on models and assumptions, not on data and observations. I'm not a Luddite. I get that we generate waste and that it has to go somewhere. However, in a county like Ottawa that has severe groundwater challenges with one of the largest bodies of freshwater on the planet, we need to press for full information and transparency and robust permit conditions on any proposal for handling contaminated leachate that involves disposing it untreated on the shores of Lake Michigan. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Anyone else here to make public comment? Do we have anyone online? Okay. Moving on to the approval of the agenda, one change as was alluded to there just a moment ago. Mr. Kapilov from Consumers Energy was unable to stay on, from what I understand, but Patrick, if you could fill us in on.
Yeah, they did, had some time constraints they were up against and had to return. Hopefully I'm sure we're confident we can get them back for their normal presentation, but as you know, today's discussion was a little bit of a pivot with the news about the injection well, and they were planning to address that as well. So I did want to update the board, and it's been alluded to already, because I've let a couple members of the public know that they did commit in an email that they are recommending a public hearing with the US EPA and the Michigan Department of Environmental Lakes, Eagle, regarding the deep well. And Deputy Administrator Doucette informed me that that would likely take place the first week in May. We will certainly follow up and confirm that and be prepared with, if it's the desire of this body, to have a resolution to recommend a public hearing at your April 30th meeting. We can be prepared for that as well.
Okay, great. So then if we do that on April 30, that's ample time to
Yeah,
submit.
we'll continue to monitor that.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, would you be okay with would this committee be okay with pivoting, since we're already talking about it, moving this discussion item to right now on business of the day, since it's on the forefront of everyone's minds?
I'd suggest we just work through the agenda, get to it. Let's get as much stuff we can done. It's going to be a long meeting as it is.
I'm not sure there'll be a lot more to talk about without formal presentation from consumers, but you know, we've got, I know we have other folks here waiting to present their material as well. We get approval for the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Support?
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. That was all we had for consent resolutions. Moving on to action requests.
We still have to pass the consent resolutions.
Oh, okay.
I'll move the approval of minutes from the March 10, 2026 Planning and Policy Committee.
What?
Your voice vote.
Okay, voice vote on approval of the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Now the action requests. First off, Kent, Ottawa, Muskegon Foreign Trade Zone. Patrick.
Yeah, this is a longstanding housekeeping item that's been kind of been on the shelf for a while, just through transition and administration. It has not been done, but essentially, if you're not familiar, free trade zones are designated areas near U.S. customs ports that are legally considered outside of U.S. customs. And Ottawa County is a member of the Kent, Ottawa, Muskegon Free Trade Zone. I sit on that board, as with the other county administrators from the two counties. And Grand Valley State University effectively administers that body for us, but they are not recognized or have not been recognized in the bylaws as a member. So this formally includes them. All of the other counties have signed this already. We just need to sign and say, yes, we agree that Grand Valley State is a member, and that's changes on section 2.7 of the second page of that bylaw.
Discussion? Commissioner?
Yeah, I have maybe a lot here. I guess the first question is, Patrick, I don't know how often you've been at the meetings yet. I
I've
think
only
you're
been
looking
to
twice a year, right?
Yeah, I've only been to, well, 2 meetings now. Yeah.
So I'm not sure if you feel comfortable sharing a little bit more about maybe just the everyday, like give us a couple business scenarios of what it looks like in reality yet. Do you have a handle of what it looks like in the everyday?
It's a kind of a beast, and Doug probably can fill in. Let me just say this though, as I understand it, as I describe those free trade zones, we have companies that operate in our counties that benefit from being a member of this because they do foreign trade. They import or export raw materials to make things that we manufacture here in Ottawa County. So it's to the benefit of our businesses that we are part of this, that we have these free trade zones. It protects them from things like tariffs, for example, that will lower consumer prices. So that's kind of the animal that it is, and we're members of that. We have input, and we obviously advocate for spreading the word about being a member as a business in the community.
Is it true that if a business chooses to participate with the authority, that they get certain tax breaks by choosing to participate in it? And I don't see that as a negative. I'm just wondering.
So let me give you an example. These are really tariff breaks or import fee breaks. So Meyer may order 10,000 hoses from China. They have to pay duty absent the Foreign Trade Zone Authority as soon as they bring all 10,000 hoses into their warehouse in Walker. Now, if they bring, let's say they only sell 5 and they return 5 to China, they can ask for a rebate of that duty on 5, which is a complicated, troublesome process. If they take the 10,000 hoses and bring it into a Foreign Trade Zone Authority zone, they don't pay duty until they pull them out, and they'll pay it on the 5,000. The other 5 get returned to China and no duty was ever paid. So that's one example of why for Meyer, this is a huge advantage because they're only paying duty when they actually bring it into the United States and sell it. There are other manufacturers, let's say Herman Miller wants to take imported veneer and make a very expensive table and then sell it in Germany. All right. If you didn't have a foreign trade zone, they would pay a duty on that veneer when it comes to Zealand, and then they would transport that to Germany and they pay another duty on the entire product when it's sold in Germany. So a foreign trade zone enables them to bring in these pieces, make it, and then only pay one duty when the product gets sent out, not multiple duties in the various components of their product. So that's why Herman Miller may want to participate in a zone. So depends on the manufacturer and how, or the retailer and what they're doing, but that's the value of it.
Okay.
It also has to do with warehousing of materials too, that
Sure.
they can sit in a warehouse position where they're not paying that duty.
Okay.
And On Time has a big one, and so they warehouse a lot of stuff.
Okay.
This will be the first time we ever have, Muskegon has one, so all 3 counties have one now.
Who's our current commissioner on this?
Me,
You? Okay, great.
I was on there years ago too, and you were on there a while, right, Jim?
No.
Well, I thought I took your place, no?
No.
Okay.
I think it was Commissioner Curran before.
It was. Mhm.
Yep. So I guess, thank you for that explanation. So it looks like Grand Valley has been a participant going back to 1999 based on a little bit of research that I did, but has not been a voting member. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, so none of the 3 counties wanted to operate this, all right?
Mhm.
So Grand Valley, and Bob Tuttle was from Muskegon. He was on the board at Grand Valley. He said, I'm gonna make sure Grand Valley incorporates this into the Seidman School of Business. So these students can basically work and do all the mechanics of setting up these authorities and doing the paperwork. So Grand Valley came in as the servicing agent
Mhm.
through the Seidman School of Business. Now they want to be a full-fledged voting member. We're not changing the name to KOM GVSU, but that's effectively what they want. They want to be one of the now 4 entities that are the voting members of the organization.
Okay, so you answered another one of my questions, that, because we currently have 3 voting members from each county, and they have been there, but they've been in an ex officio advisory role.
And they
And-
administered it. So now they will be a member and continue to administer it. So they will hold 2 hats instead of just the one.
Okay, so I'm just gonna share my thoughts with the board is that GVSU is not elected. And I do have concerns regarding public accountability. I do believe that Grand Valley has brought a lot to the team, but there is a different role here. And they have had this role since 1999. And I have concerns with continuing to outsource government, having government leaders elected and giving them full voting rights. That is different. This isn't just how it was presented to us as a housekeeping thing. This is a pretty big change. So I'm just wanting to voice that. And then I guess I'm just gonna put that on the record at the moment, and I don't know where the rest of my commissioners land on that.
I think you make a reasonable point. Especially given that they presumably aren't utilizing the services that much. I'm kind of confused why they want voting power.
Yeah.
I don't know, is there an answer to that?
I don't know, honestly, why they want to be a full-fledged member. Other than they've just administered it for so long, they feel like they should be entitled to a seat at the actual board.
I mean, there's a lot of,
Never heard him talk about it, that's all.
Yeah, when this came up, I think Gary was the interim administrator. I thought it was a little deceptive because they didn't really come out and say, we want to amend. They just said it's an amended agreement, like they're just taking an existing agreement and amending it. And what was really happening was an additional member was added. So I'm glad Patrick described it the way he did. That's really what is happening, is they're joining the 3 counties. Now, I will say this, but for Grand Valley's saving this organization by providing the labor, it would have withered and died on the vine because the counties created it and then none of them wanted to use their pulse sacks or their strategic
Sure.
impact.
But it also benefits them too. It does benefit them too.
Yeah, I don't know that it benefits them other than it's great for their students to learn, in that
Mhm.
program,
Yep.
how you benefit from a foreign trade zone. And they can go out and then get a job at Herman Miller or Meyer and say, I know all about this. I spent time actually working for the administrator.
Yeah, I guess the other thing that bothered me is that if you go back in this, go back in here and you look at the dates of when things are signed, Grand Valley was the very first one to sign, and that was back in December of 2024. If you look at how it was brought forward, the dates are really, there's a lot of long gaps between, and I don't know, that's just another, I guess, thing to note. So I don't feel comfortable voting to support their addition of adding and vote. I'm totally great with going back to how it was operating in the past. I would be in full support of continuing the partnership with Grand Valley being in that advisory role. So,
I will say that Ottawa was the one that caused the delay. And the reason was related to your questions here. And when Gary presented it to me, I said, I don't know if they've been added before. And I asked them to show me where in the last 20 years, they were added as a member. And this is what came back. So it was a little bit devious. That having been said, now that we've clarified that that's really what's going on here, the other 2 counties have approved it. And we would be lost without Grand Valley. But I agree with you, and that's why the timing's off. We refused to approve this until they really let us know what was happening. And
yeah, and to be fair, just because 2 other counties approved it
No, I
doesn't mean
know.
that Ottawa has to approve it.
no, you're right.
Yep.
Question.
Yes, Kendra.
With their position in this and wanting voting power, in your opinion, is there any kind of
Conflict?
conflict of interest there?
In a way, there could be, because they're the administrator and they're also a party at the board. The reality is, though, these things benefit only the private sector. There's no public sector benefit other than we're helping the private sector, right? And to the extent that we make business more attractive in West Michigan, that's helping our tax base and our employment and all that. So the reality is, although it's probably technically a conflict, I don't see where it's all that material because everything they do is focused on the private sector rather than the public sector itself. For instance, they're really not getting any money that I'm aware of for operating the zone. I don't, they're just doing it as an educational exercise for them. The
Yep.
things that the board does are not controversial. I don't know that they've ever rejected a company's application because, again, this is only a positive thing that relates to federal duties and tariffs that are paid. And so I don't see that it's all that, there's anything that's too controversial. If we can find more companies to take advantage of it, it's always been the positive.
And that's really what their role has been, is the advocacy role to try to promote it. And they help the companies that want to apply go through that process because it's very rigorous to get approval to be a member. And that's not an administrative burden I would want our county to take on. So we're appreciative of the relationship that we have with the Grand Valley group, but I understand and appreciate the concerns that are raised.
I have a legal question I guess I'd like to put in here, but I preface that by, I graduated from Grand Valley. My son did. Everybody knows where I am with Grand Valley generally. But it is a nonprofit organization. There's no profit motive here in any of this. The only benefit is what goes to the students as far as experience goes and everything. But I do have a legal question in the budget, in the action request here. It does say that this authority operates under the auspices of the Intergovernmental Contracts Between Municipalities Act.
But they are a public entity that can participate under that act.
They can,
Yes,
okay.
they can, yes, because they're a public entity. They weren't part of the fourth estate, they couldn't.
So
But they
then
can participate.
that's not exclusive municipalities then
No.
apparently.
Now, we can, I don't know that we have any agreements under that act with law enforcement. We may have a mutual aid agreement with Grand Valley Police under that act. And so they are defined as one of the entities that can participate. And that is a common activity where their law enforcement activities will be coordinated through cities and counties. So
Okay.
they are an authorized entity that can participate under that act.
Okay, I think that's important.
And they could also, yes, push came to shove, they could operate their own foreign trade zone because they're a public entity that could do that. So I guess one of their remedies is, well, we don't need Kent, Ottawa, and Muskegon anymore. They don't really do anything other than we do all the heavy lifting, and so we're kicking them. They can have their own authority. We're not going to administer it and go off on their own to do their own thing.
Okay.
I don't see no negative part of this, and we still have the majority vote as counties.
Yeah.
I'm supportive of it. As much work as they've always been doing, I was on it for years before, so, I mean, there's a lot of financial benefit for a lot of the people that use them, especially the companies and the people that it goes through.
I'm a little concerned, given, I think Commissioner Miedema raises some good points, and especially given the potentially politically hot topic of tariffs. I don't necessarily, I think leaving it in the county's hands is wiser. And frankly, if I think Grand Valley, if they want to keep administering, I have no issue with that. Then if they say, well, if you're not going to give us a seat, we don't want to administer it anymore. It seems like something that the Grand Rapids Chamber of Commerce or Lakeshore Advantage could or should be doing anyways, to be honest with you, is it's a direct benefit to businesses and attracting businesses. So I'm inclined to vote no as well, personally.
If we have no other comments, are we ready to take a vote on this?
I do not have a motion or a second.
That's right.
Oh,
Motion.
thank you for catching that. Thanks, Rachel.
Patrick
second.
just- He was ready.
Did you guys already motion? Because I'll make a motion to table this item.
I wouldn't mind doing that.
Process
and-
of making a motion.
Oh, you already made it?
Mhm.
No, that was just a motion,
It was.
put the motion on the table because it was never on,
Okay.
but you can vote too.
I'll make a motion to table this item.
Support.
And there's support. All right.
We request more information in from them, the main reason why they want to do it.
No, I would just table it, and if they want to come back with a different resolution, they can, but I think that's contingent on them. It is tabling to me is just off the table, and if Patrick wants to have a further conversation with them, to come back with an agreement that looks how it used to, that's fine, but for our purposes, it's just simply removing it from our agenda.
If I may add something, I think the issue of a conflict is worthwhile in asking. You know, we're a little confused here. This has worked well. We don't necessarily aren't voting no on this, but we want to know why you want to be
And why
a
now?
full-fledged member instead of the administrator, and
Mhm.
whether this creates some sort of conflict.
Mhm.
And at least ask them to contribute with those answers to those questions, and then you can take it up again.
If there's
I-
if there's
Sorry.
good answers to that question, then I'd be open to voting
Exactly.
yes, but
Mhm.
right now I'm not gonna
Yeah.
vote yes. I do want to say motions to table are not debatable, so we should vote.
Just vote.
Rachel, do you call that or we do this from the chair?
Let's do a roll call.
Roll call. Okay.
You support that?
So it's the motion to table.
Motion to table.
Mr. Teeples?
Yes.
Mr. Kyers? Mrs. Wenzel?
Yes.
Mrs. Medema?
Yes.
Mr. Georgezma?
Yes.
Mr. Barry?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Right, next is the solid waste financing ordinance. Jordan, do you? care?
The motion is to approve and forward to the Board of Commissioners the solid waste financing ordinance.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second. Do we have discussion on this one?
Let me kick this off.
Sure.
Yeah, and Doug and I will tag team on this. This has been a long worked on effort. I think it goes back to maybe post-COVID where the county started talking about developing an ordinance. As you are aware, we have a solid waste management plan that's in the works right now. That solid waste management plan allows the county to deal with all things related to the cost of solid waste, including the waste that travels into the county from outside of the county and the long-standing legacy costs associated with that disposal. Most recently, I think 2023, the state passed a statute that allows counties to impose fees that are associated with the costs for handling waste in their jurisdictions. Right now, we don't have a mechanism like that. We have two agreements with the two landfills that we have, Republic and Waste Management, that are really based on revenues, gross revenue sharing. 2% of the gross revenues that they receive every year is passed on. And we have several projects that are being talked about in the waste management plan that we don't have funding allocated for, as well as the longstanding costs of the Southwest area landfill. And as you're familiar with that, we've been monitoring, have to have monitoring wells out there and treat the water that comes up through the ground through there as a result of the fact that there's no liner under that abandoned landfill. So this really is a financial discussion, and I've asked Karen if you can put that up to kind of give a graphic that shows kind of the financial picture of where we've been versus where we're going back to 2013. So the black line on the bottom represents the revenue stream. And that's the combination of both the 2% that we receive from both Waste and Republic, as well as some of the fees that public health collects through grants and associated with recycling centers. The expenses have gone up, as you can see, that has outpaced the revenue stream. The revenue stream's been pretty flatline. Now, we've never, to my knowledge, audited Waste Management in Republic to say, show us your books, show us that is actually 2%. But, you know, if you look at that line, there's some concerns there. So we don't have the ability to really go back and do that at this point. But as we start to plan for the future and what our waste management costs are going to be, we have been drawing down the fund reserves, which is the blue shaded area, to cover that gap. And as you can see, that we're going to reach a point in about 2027 where the fund reserves are gone, and we're going to have to use probably general fund or other tax dollars to pay for some of these needed capital costs. So Doug has put together an ordinance that's very similar to what other communities are doing and have done successfully. And it would be a user fee that the waste haulers pay, not the landfills. So the haulers that bring the trash into Ottawa County, which I should note is about 70% outside, is where our trash comes from, is outside of Ottawa. That would be fee based by the people that are actually generating trash and putting it into our landfills would pay this new fee. That fee would be flexible. We would true it up every year. If we collected too much, we would hold it steady for the next year. If we're underfunding, we can adjust it. The contract doesn't allow us to do that. The contract is a set amount, so the fee can be adjusted by ordinance to be flexible. So that's the model, and we're looking to generate about $1 million a year through this fee with the amount of trash that we're getting right now. And that's to cover the anticipated capital costs that we have outlined.
Yeah, I don't know, Regina, you can pull up. So Waste Management is threatening to sue. I want to show you this paragraph. This is from 1991. And I need to briefly take you back to that period of time. So the county's solid waste management plan is circa 1988. Okay, and this is, counties are coming up with these plans. Ottawa had a surcharge that they put in place back then. The industry didn't feel that Part 31 enabled counties to charge a surcharge to fund their solid waste activities. So there was this hanging controversy between the industry statewide and the counties statewide. Is such a fee authorized or not? And Mike Smith from Miller Johnson was the lead county attorney at the time dealing with waste management. And we had a number of issues that were in court. One was the relationship between Waste Management's facility and Southwest Landfill. Waste Management had also operated Southwest Landfill for the county, and we had a claim for reimbursement for some of the ongoing environmental costs. And then Waste Management wanted to locate a landfill in Robinson Township right along the Grand River. And that was prohibited by our new solid waste management plan. They sued us over that. So Mike negotiated this omnibus agreement with Waste Management, which had them focused on Zealand Charter Township, now Autumn Hills. It's called Woodside in this agreement, but that's really Autumn Hills. They rebranded it. They agreed that they would not develop the landfill along the Grand River, but rather sell that. And I think they sold it to the state, which was attractive to the county. And then we came up with this language. Greg Rappley had just become corporate counsel. I was still the attorney for the county and the insurance authority. And the three of us worked on this language that you see with waste management. And it really is, in the parlance, and John will appreciate this, it's a covenant not to sue, and it's also an election of remedies. Now, one limitation we realized is one board of commissioners cannot contract and bind the legislative power of of subsequent county boards of commissioners. So the feeling was a surcharge is a legislative activity. It's a fee-setting activity. And so no county board can say in 1991, we are forever forswearing the ability legislatively of subsequent county boards of commissioners to act and enable these surcharges. Waste Management was claiming that the surcharge, whether legislative or put it in the plan, didn't matter what, was illegal. So we came up, but they were willing to pay it contractually at 2%. So what this language says is Waste Management agrees to pay the surcharge, the 2%, on their revenue in accordance with the terms of the agreement and not challenge in a court of law the constitutionality or the legality of that charge. And they would continue based on contract, even if a court agreed with the industry and said those surcharges are not lawful under a solid waste management plan. The county agreed that it wouldn't impose a higher surcharge on waste management, even if a higher surcharge was authorized by another commission in the solid waste management plan or some statute. Then we recognize that the board in 1991 could not bind this board, and we have a provision in there that says in the event of a legislative action by the County Board of Commissioners to impose a higher surcharge on waste management, the obligations of waste management to pay the 2% become null and void, and they may sue to even collect the amount they paid contractually during the period of time the agreement was in effect. All right? Now, subsequent to this paragraph, the courts ruled in the county's favor and said the Solid Waste Management Act is perfectly, it's appropriate for counties to include in their plan or in an ordinance enforcing their plan a surcharge. That was the John Sexton case that's referenced in the ordinance. In 2023, recognizing that the legislature was going to impose on counties materials handling a more robust recycling and materials handling and waste diversion activities, which under Headley would require some financial mechanism or the state would have to bear the cost of that
Unfunded
burden.
mandate.
They passed a statute that said, yes, we're expecting Ottawa County and the other counties to come up with whether it's curbside recycling or to come up with other innovative waste diversion mechanisms. And we are expressly authorizing them to enact landfill surcharges or flow control ordinances that will have a fee embedded in them to pay for that materials handling. So my argument to Waste Management over the last 3.5, 4 years in which we've been debating this ordinance is we are not imposing a higher surcharge on waste management. This is focused on the haulers. Now, Waste Management is a hauler, but this relates to their landfill, not the hauler. And so the prohibition here isn't even implicated. However, if I'm wrong about that, and if you're right that this is effectively an ordinance surcharge on the landfill, even if that's true, your remedy that you selected is you don't have to pay the 2% anymore. And you could go to court and theoretically sue us for the back payment that you've made. But in light of John Sexton, that's not going to be a loser because the courts have held that counties had the authority all along to do the 2%. So I don't see where Waste Management has an argument against what we're proposing to do here. It is a legislative action that we're recommending that the board do. It's imperative that we get this extra revenue because we have a hazardous waste management program that diverts household hazardous chemicals from the landfills that really primarily benefits the landfills, although indirectly the environment and therefore us. We're pulling all that material out and we've done it with a Band-Aid approach. Frankly, we're not compliant with OSHA in our hazardous waste collection. We don't have water. You're supposed to have a wash station and in case someone takes in a chemical pesticide and gets it in their eyes. Right now, Kim and her team don't even have wash stations to adequately deal with that. And OSHA said you're in violation given this kind of activity. So we believe we need at least $500,000 in under current construction costs, perhaps even more, to develop a more robust facility for our household hazardous waste collection. We would love to get rid of Southwest Landfill, and we've got some ideas on how we might do that in the future. But for now, the taxpayers of Ottawa County are burdened with paying for the environmental consequences when we were only 30% of the flow into that landfill, like we're 30% of the flow into the other landfills. And so it's disproportionately fallen on our taxpayers to pay for the legacy costs of Southwest Landfill. That's an area that's going to require, if we don't get delisted and close that facility, with up to $3 or $4 million for a new purge and treat system. And then we have these robust recycling activities that the current hazard waste, it changed. The committee is called, I think, the materials handling, not solid waste anymore. It's materials handling to fit with the new emphasis by the state of Michigan on more robust recycling and waste diversion programs. We don't even know what those are going to cost, and yet we know that they're going to be expensive. So the purpose of this ordinance is to put in place a fee-setting mechanism on the solid waste community that uses our landfills and that's imposing these costs on our community, and also to prepare the way for a more robust materials handling system that will keep those landfills from having to expand indefinitely and forever and consuming more farmland, and try to manage the rate that the landfills are growing to make them more useful long-term. That's the purpose of this ordinance. It's clearly a legislative act designed to bring in more revenues. And I don't see where, even if their view of this paragraph is sustained, that it helps them, because ultimately it says you picked in 1991 what your remedies are, and you have the right, theoretically, if you're correct that this is an imposition on you, to stop paying the 2%. Now, what that will force you to do is, right now we're looking at $1, and roughly we have 1 million tons a year is coming into the both landfills. When you aggregate their two disposal sums, it's about 1 million a year. So that $1 per ton will generate $1 million, coupled with the 500,000 that we're getting annually from this agreement and a similar agreement with Republic. That's about $1.5 million. Well, this year alone, we're likely to spend way more than that, but we feel like $1.5 million is kind of the sweet spot as we go forward, because some of these capital costs for the new hazardous waste facility and even the purge and treat system are not ongoing costs. We spend about $300,000 to $500,000 on Southwest Landfill every year operating the purge and treat system. So if we can have $1.5 million, we are going to spread that revenue over time, and we think capitalize. That's about our sweet spot right now. If we get rid of Southwest landfill, we then have to true up, and it's every 2 years, Patrick, not every year.
Oh, I thought it was 3. It's 2?
You know, I think it's
I think this says 2.
2 years. And we didn't want to change the rate we're charging the community. That was input from the haulers and the landfills, like, consistency is important to us. So don't do that every year. Do it on a 2 or 3 year cycle. But it's also important when you're dealing with fees, because ultimately they get passed to the consumers, that they have a true up where the county actually looks at what is it expending in solid waste and what are the fees generating, and are we collecting too much or are we not collecting enough? So that true up process will be done by the County Board of Commissioners every 2 years under the ordinance, where we will measure projected expenses against projected revenues and set that ordinance fee based on that determination and float along as we go forward.
I have a couple questions.
Okay, Commissioner Georgezma.
Very thorough explanation, so I appreciate that. My question is, because when you read that paragraph, it's fairly clear, right? If we do put on a fee over and above what they agreed to in 1991, they can sue and they can seek damages for every dollar that they've paid up till now. How much money would that be if they make their argument? I mean, we talking $20 million, $40 million? I mean, if it's $500,000.
Well, that's 500 between the two.
Yeah.
So figure half of that, 250 a year.
For the
But
30 years,
Commissioner,
35 years.
yeah, but right after this came down, the courts really resolved the question. So they know that suing is ineffective. That's not the remedy they want. They want to actually, I can't speak for them, but what they've said is we're going to sue to enforce this. We don't want to, we just want 2% being the cap. And we think this is a device that's still covered by that. And so your commitment not to raise the surcharge is binding on you. And therefore, we just want the surcharge to continue at 2%. I think that's their primary objective. The covenant not to sue is worthless. In 1991, it wasn't, because it was 50-50 proposition. Today, it's worthless because they can go to court. And the John Sexton case has long ago ruled that these surcharges are entirely appropriate and lawful. So I don't even think they're going to ask for that. They could, but it's specious.
Okay, second piece of it is, I mean, I appreciate you also pointing out that this fee increase it's not a fee increase on waste management. It's a fee increase on Ottawa County citizens and a lot of non-Ottawa County citizens. And I don't care so much about that. So is there a way to, I don't know if they track this, but to split trucks that have Ottawa County routes versus non-Ottawa County routes? Because if it's 70% from out of the county, I don't really have any problem throwing $1 on those, because there is a valid point to be made. This is trash that isn't from Ottawa coming into Ottawa. They should have to pay, a fee for that. But I'm not super keen on raising everybody's trash bill, even a modest amount.
Yeah, interestingly, Kent's done this, and they've charged $1.23 per household. Now, I can't believe that. I know I seem to generate a lot of waste for my wife and I, but I know it's not a ton a month. All right, so it's got to be much, much less than that. So I don't know if the haulers are necessarily going to push this on, but let's say they do at some level, 10, 20 cents per month. I don't know. I don't know what it takes to collect a ton of trash from the net, from a normal household. But that's the kind of cost that we're talking about. They have to track in general terms where the waste is originating from. So when a truck comes in, I don't know how careful they are about this, but if it's running along Georgetown, or it may dip into Kent County, maybe something along Holland, you have the Allegan Holland thing going, and they'll come in and they have to report on a general basis is, well, this is about 90% Kent waste, 10% Ottawa, vice versa, things of that nature. So there is a way that they are, we believe the 70% is fairly accurate if you're collecting it in a very inaccurate way per truck. But over time, we think that that's fairly accurate. It's a little hard, though, to break the fee down that way. So, and then, you know, are you going to get haulers that are going to claim it's all Ottawa, so they don't get the fee when some of it's I mean, and then there's the equal protection claim. Are you really discriminating against, you know, out of county waste as opposed to in-county waste when the burden of your activities is relatively the same on the environment, on your recycling and all of that? So candidly, Commissioner, we talked about that. I think John Teeples wanted that in there. We've taken it out. It's just too complicated. It raises too many legal issues, and it would be difficult to administer on a truck by truck basis. We've also done some things to accommodate the industry. Like we've said, if you don't collect it, you don't have to pay it. Honestly, I don't think they're going to play games with that, but it's tie-barred to their own collection. A lot of these trucks come in and they're not paying cash or a credit card. They're just put it on our bill. And then hopefully that bill is paid. If it isn't paid over time or it's paid at 50%, we collect 50% of our surcharge as they collect 50% of their tipping fee. So we've built some mechanisms to deal with some of the industry's complaints about this, to try to make it as easy as possible for them to administer and make it less difficult on their operations. So yes, you could probably do a mechanism like that. It would be legally problematic, and it's practically problematic.
Commissioner Miedema.
I think Commissioner Wenzel was waiting first if she wanted
Well,
to.
you're in no man's land.
I'm sorry.
I read their email this morning that we received, and it talks about, as drafted, there are a number of legal issues including defined costs, talks about Part 115 confidentiality of proprietary and confidential records, Fourth Amendment issues, and also states as written, it lacks the opportunity for public participation, cost justifications, and preventing cost escalations. I wanted to know what your thoughts were on that.
Well, first of all, I've told them all along, I want to see even the 500,000 treated like a fee. They treat it like, oh, we're just giving you 500. If you spend it on parks, fine with us. We don't care. I don't think that's appropriate. So I think getting it back into a fee basis, make sure that you have elected commissioners that are setting the entire fee, not just anything above the 500, and they are truing that up and making sure that that is not generating more revenues that are needed. I don't think our public has ever been victimized by the 500 because we've always had expenses with Southwest and our hazardous waste program that have been more than 500 a year, but theoretically they could. So I see this, my answer to that would be this gets us back into a healthier relationship where elected officials, not those in 1991, make the decision, but those currently make the decision of what needs to be levied and why. And you're accountable to both to the industry and to the people of Ottawa and the people of Kent and Allegan and wherever for the decisions that you make. So I see it as just the opposite. This brings more transparency and it brings us in line with how fees are supposed to be calculated, which is by elected officials on an annual or semi-annual basis in light of need.
I guess what the confidentiality in the Fourth Amendment issues, what are your, what,
Well, I don't think they like the fact that we can look at their records and make sure they're not cheating us. Honestly, they've exceeded their caps that they agreed to in these agreements year after year after year. And we get the same 500,000 within very little range. So they've had some really big waste years. And right now, Waste Management has a contract with Kent where they're taking a lot of waste that used to go to Autumn Hills, or I'm sorry, Ottawa Farms is now going to Autumn Hills. And we get the same from Waste Management. We have never looked at their books to verify that the 2% is actually what they're paying us. We are taking that on good faith. What the ordinance does say is we have a right to look at how they're calculating. And frankly, I don't know that we'll have to do that because they report to the state under penalty of perjury how much waste they're taking in. And we can calculate this with our own calculator. We don't have to audit their books. They're saying they took in 1 million tons last year. We're expecting $1 million. And if for some reason it's 1 million tons and we're getting 500,000 collectively, we'll probably exercise some of these provisions and go in and take a look at their books to verify that somehow they paid or they collected the appropriate amount. If they come in and they say, well, we took in 1 million tons, but some of these haulers didn't actually pay us the fee, then we might have to look at whether that was true or not, or whether they're not actually collecting the fee. Curiously, they're paying the tipping fee, but they're not paying the surcharge. And they're committed under the ordinance to pay the same ratio on their tipping fee that is separately billed under the ordinance. So if they charge $50 for a tipping fee and $5 for the surcharge, that's $55, and only 25 comes in, they should be paying the surcharge at the same 48% as they're paying themselves, so they're not playing games. You see what I mean?
mm-hmm.
So yes, we have some auditing mechanisms in there. And it's not uncommon to have auditing mechanisms. We do this, you don't fund 911 with phone surcharges, but other counties are reliant on the surcharge for 911 on the phone bills. Those companies pay games all the time. The state actually is supposed to be auditing to make sure that they're actually paying the percentage that they're supposed to be levying on customers on your phone bills for that 911. So the state has an auditing mechanism that they have in place. And yes, that does give them access to the number of Verizon customers in Allegan County. So what? That's never been viewed by the courts as a violation of your confidentiality rights. You operate in the public sector, you're collecting these fees, there's a right to audit.
Right. Commissioner Miedema, and I think Commissioner Teeples would like to get in here too, so.
Sounds good. So a lot of work getting up to this point, and so I think some of us are probably still processing some of what you shared. I have followed along with materials management and solid waste for a while, but some of this is new and some of it's review. I guess one of the things that hasn't really been addressed yet is, I guess, is where this is coming from. So I guess my first question is this coming, this request for us to consider today from the two of you? Because that's who I've seen, like, it's been presented by you, Doug, in our packet, and then it's been signed by Patrick. Would that be a fair
Actually, it
assessment?
started under Administrator John Shea, I believe. That's when they started talking about this. And with the transition that occurred, I think that it was kind of stopped to look at different alternatives. And Doug and I, so this was one of the things on my desk, right, when I came in. And Doug and I have actually met with both companies multiple times to kind of get the ball rolling again. Again, we have longstanding discussions about capital projects and the needs for the recycling centers to move things forward, but without a funding source. And we're watching that fund balance, as I showed in that graph, go down, 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 down. And we don't have a sustainable funding model to do the things we are required to be doing.
Okay.
So we had to come up with a mechanism for funding, and that's where we're at today.
Yeah, and I guess just a caveat of why some of my question is typically when things come to us, when we have a committee that we have given direction to oversee things, so such as ag preservation or parks or whatnot, typically we see stuff in a packet that gives evidence that this has gone through a proper process. So I'm not seeing anything in here, any communication from the Materials Management Committee, and I'm wondering why not? Has this gone to that committee for review?
I can, yeah.
And if so, I would like to know the dialogue. Has it gone before a vote before them? Has this ordinance been shown to them? Why yes, why not? I would like to understand better about how it's being presented to us.
Absolutely. So, let me get my dates right here. 2022. Okay. The Solid Waste Management Committee voted to recommend that the Board of Commissioners amend the Solid Waste Management Act to include this more robust fee. All right. As you know, we had a transition in county government in January of that. So the committee had voted to recommend, it had not gone to the Board of Commissioners. When the new board came in, John Gibbs.
Okay, are you going back to 23?
So now it's 2023.
While we're still in the solid waste
In
committee?
December of 2022, the committee voted to recommend that the board in 2023 amend the solid waste management plan. Joe
The
was.
Board of Commissioners did?
Yes.
Or the
Now we have
materials, or the solid waste
The
did?
Board of Commissioners. So it was coming out of their committee and going to the Board of Commissioners. The new board
Mhm.
wanted a different approach. And so John Gibbs, and I think maybe Joe, I don't know, Jack Jordan, they decided, let's see if we can get an amendment to the agreement. So they met with Waste Management and Republic to modify the 2% because they recognized we needed more revenue, that was 35 years old and it no longer, costs had increased and we had more expenses. They never got, to my knowledge, an offer from the two landfills to increase the 2%. And it kind of languished at that point. So nothing happened. When I came back a year ago with Gary, we revived the issue and we decided to go the ordinance route rather, because solid waste management plans are not even being approved by the state anymore. They've gone to a completely different system, and that's the materials handling. So at that point, we decided to develop this ordinance. So this ordinance is over a year old. And we did meet with that committee has changed. The public representatives are no longer on there like they were before. The industry basically controls that committee now. So we did the ordinance route, but we met with them and the haulers.
I'm sorry, can you go back to, who actually sits, so when you say the haulers, control the meetings, can you give us the makeup of that, committee?
I don't have that detail in front of me,
Okay, I think that's a really important information piece for us to have.
but
So-
that committee had jurisdiction to advance changes to the solid waste management plan. That doesn't exist anymore. So while that committee is advisory to the board, and we went in front of that committee is now dominated by the industry. They gave us input. And I mentioned some of the changes we made because they were concerned about, not getting paid and then having to pay the surcharge. We've adjusted that. We took input from the industry on bag house dust. There's a lot of foundries in Michigan and West Michigan that deposit bag house dust. We've excluded that from the surcharge as an accommodation to that industry. So they've received a lot of input. Then eventually, they got down to brass tacks and said, we would prefer to do it by agreement. And that's what Patrick and I met with them, said, make us an offer. For us, it's more about getting the money we need to operate our program. Now, the preference would be to do it by a fee in a more of a traditional setting. But if we can raise the same revenue and it can be flexible so that the Board of Commissioners can adjust it from time to time, both lower and higher, by truing up, we might be willing to consider an amendment to the agreement that put us more in line with accountability to the public, but also met our needs. What we got back was right now they've calculated they're paying about 60 cents per ton. They've offered 80.
Okay,
they've
so
off-
can I interrupt you a second?
Yeah.
I just want to go back to my question. So my question is, while I recognize that the board has the authority to adopt an ordinance separate from it going through the proper process of a committee, I see that as a proper process. Has this ordinance at least been shown
Yes.
to the Materials Management Committee? Did they know it was going to be on today's agenda? I asked that because I've done some feeling out and I'm getting the no, I did not know this was going to be on the agenda. We have not looked at this ordinance. And so that concerns me. I just want to make sure we're following proper steps. I would like to have feedback from the committee members. I think your feedback is both of your feedback is really important, but we did give people seats for a reason to serve in their roles, and I would like to hear from them as well. And I'm not seeing that in here, and that's why I'm trying to flesh out, like, where has it been up to this point?
Yeah, so like I said, they recommended in 2022, both the ordinance and the solid waste the plan amendment change, both of them. So in 2022, they did. Last year, they were given not a proposed amendment to the plan because that doesn't exist anymore, but they were shown the ordinance. And it's the same ordinance that they approved in 2022. They provided a lot of input over a course of meetings. They have not formally approved it and recommended it. That is true. I think right now they're not going to do that because they're dominated on that committee
Yeah,
by the industry.
there's 11 members on that committee, only 3 are elected representatives. The rest are private sector representatives with clear conflicts of interest on this ordinance.
Okay, but we have, you said 3 elected officials on it? Okay, I would really like to be able to hear from them, from their feedback, as part of this conversation. I know that Commissioner Joe Moss serves on it and he's not part of this policy committee. So, separate from that, I guess I'm going to stop there. I do have more questions, but that was I could keep going. I have a lot more questions because this is it's a pretty big change. I appreciated Commissioner Jortsman's questions. I do have concern about raising taxes on our constituents. I would like to see more, I know Doug, you shared that it wasn't doable, breaking it up, and I guess I would like to better understand that, because I would like to explore that if that's something that this committee wants to go forward with, of taxing residents from Kent versus our residents. I think that is something that I would like to have fleshed out a little bit more.
Yeah, just keep in mind that this thing has been languishing for at least 4 years. And unfortunately, it's going to take time, even if you were to adopt it now, for the revenue to flow in. Meanwhile, we have pressing needs for getting OSHA compliant so that we don't have an employee injured on the job with these hazardous waste programs. So there's an urgent need. There was a need last year for the 500,000. I don't know that's worked into your current budget for this year, but we keep delaying these imperative improvements that we need for our own program. And so they're going to have to be paid out of general fund, Ottawa County tax dollars. So that is the alternative. You can put this off another year and you're just delaying what I view as the equitable distribution of these costs among the entire community of residents that uses our landfills, as opposed to just the Ottawa County taxpayers.
That's a fair point. That is a fair point. I talked to Joe Bush about this issue probably last year at some point, and he had brought up Monsanto money as being a potential short-term solution for the purge and treat system. Have you guys explored that?
What we're trying to do on the Pat Siskevich from the Road Commission has pushed the purge and treat capital improvements off for 2 years. All right. During that period of time, this environment, right, the only reason we continue to purge and treat is the 11 parts per trillion of PFAS that frankly, we're not even fully taking out under our purge and treat system. EPA has issued a memo that with respect to municipal landfills, PFAS should not be an enforced bill action. Our hope is to delist the Southwest landfill before we have to spend what in 2 years will be $5 million.
So,
Okay, so we are going to make an effort to try to close that facility, which right now Eagle probably would have let us do, but for the fact that there's PFAS there. But we're hoping to use the current federal environment to close that Superfund site and move on, and therefore not have as great a burden as would otherwise be imposed on this surcharge.
and I completely agree with that, and I think that would be a great solution. But in that case, then the graph you showed earlier would be false, because that is the huge, as I understand it, that's the huge increase in expenses slated for 2 years from now. So if we take $5 million of our expense, our projected expenses out of the picture, and all we're left is becoming OSHA compliant, $500,000 to become OSHA compliant. So why are we charging $1 million every year?
Well,
going?
even on that graph, Commissioner, if you recall, the lines aren't and, you know, you've got a deficit
Right.
spending situation. So even if you took the capital projects out of the picture, it's still diminishing the what do we got, 1.4 and 1.5 million left in fund balance in those two funds. So that's what we're pulling out of to pay for that deficit spending. And that's not sustainable forever. So there's got to be some funding mechanism that comes in. Now, if we're successful in what Doug's talking about, which could take a while, we are focused on starting to address the backlog of capital projects that we need right now to be in compliance with our waste management plan.
But I would say this. I didn't know Joe hasn't called us and volunteered to spend that on Sam. But if he's
Volunteer and just said it's there.
honestly, that's a separate question. How much you levy is up to you. Let's say you could get the 5 million and that would take that part of the equation out. Maybe, and frankly, I would like to see the 2% eliminated. And so.
We offered that.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're headed. If they do sue, I think what's gonna happen is the judge is gonna say, you agreed to the remedy, you know, no more 2%. And I like it better that the current commissioners decide how much is necessary anyway. So then, you might very well decide if 60 cents generates the 500,000, which is what they say, that you only need, well, 500,000 has not really met Kim's need operationally, but maybe you only need 80 cents for a period of time to do the household hazardous waste and the other recycling that she has. No more 2%, but that's just your fee. And when the materials handling committee comes in with their robust recycling plan, so robust that Kent, which has a landfill and an incinerator whereby it can generate revenues, has, in anticipation of that plan, imposed a $1.20 surcharge on each resident and household in order to collect that revenue that they anticipate will be necessary for the materials handling. So right now, we have 500,000 just with Kim's operation, the capital costs, another 500,000. We also have Southwest Landfill at 300,000, even without the capital cost. You will be in a position to decide how much goes onto this surcharge as you go forward. And if Monsanto can be used for Kim's thing, I don't think it can, but it's probably only a purge and treat, but whatever. If you have other sources of revenue, then you will have to adjust under the ordinance your fee down to a realistic number, because it becomes a tax legally if you're using it to just capture general revenue. Okay, it's a fee if it's defraying your costs. If it's more than that, it's a tax. That's the way the Supreme Court looks at it. So as you go forward with this mechanism in place, you get to set from time to time what you're actually going to levy according to your need.
That's helpful, thank you.
Commissioner Meadwell, one more.
Yeah, so you're talking about Kim's thing. Can you elaborate on Kim's thing? Because in the packet, it talks about the $1 million a year is needed to fund recycling programs, environmental protections, and cleanup of old landfill sites. So what new recycling programs are you hoping to fund with this?
I'm just looking at Kim's current operation. It's 500,000, as I've been told. And that's for her wages and, you know, I use this example with the committee, they don't like it, but whatever. We took in some mercury. Some teacher had remember the liquid mercury we used to play around with in chemistry class? Yeah, oh my gosh, the danger of that. Anyway, this teacher had a jar of liquid mercury. It cost us because we accept it for nothing. It cost us $12,000 or $13,000 to dispose of that jar of mercury. And if we hadn't done that, what do you think the family would have done? They would have put it in a paint can and thrown it into the waste and hoped that it never leached out from the liner of the landfill. Or on our street when it got compressed and the mercury's going down some residential street. So it's a worthwhile program, but Kim is spending that without the commercial caliber wash stations and water to her facilities. She's done a great job, you know, with a kind of Band-Aid duct tape approach to that operation, but that costs us about 500,000, as I understand it. 300,000, 350 is the legacy cost of Southwest Landfill.
So you're saying to still basically doing the same thing. This isn't to create new programs?
Well, I think there's been discussions about different sites or improved sites, right, throughout the county. And I think there was discussions on the Grand Valley property. Those are still in the plan as what's next for the locations of these and how many do we actually need to serve the county. So it's not just looking at what it costs to run what we have, but looking kind of like what Jason's doing, looking at what's coming down the road and do we have the capital to fund setting those sites up as well as operating them.
And Commissioner, I would add this too. Then it's an ongoing tool for you as a board to interface with the Materials Handling Committee on what these more robust materials handling options are going to mean to the public, right? So if they come up and they say, we want to do curbside recycling in Grand Haven, Holland, and Georgetown, and the cost of that is $500,000 a year, you know that at $1 million or 1 million tons, that's 50 cents, right? That would have to be included when you true up to cover that particular cost. So when you get that part of the plan, you've got the tool that you can apply to show you how much you need to raise in this surcharge to cover that proposal that they're making. Right now, it's just they can come to you with $500,000. That's our plan is we're going to spend $1 million of whose money? The contingency fee that we had at 900,000 out of our tax dollars? Or do we have a mechanism in place to make the solid waste community, of which 70% isn't even Ottawa County, pay for whatever they come up with? It's just a tool.
All right, I'd like to get Commissioner Teeples in, please.
You're right. There's a ton of data, information here. I've been trying to grapple with this issue for 9 months. I did attend a solid waste committee meeting last year where this ordinance was discussed. And I was hearing about the importance of the cost and all those kind of things associated with this. That's when I started first becoming aware of this issue. Extremely complex because it has lots of legal consequences to it. But my sense is at this point, we can't be afraid of waste management or Republic. We have a responsibility as county representatives to protect the solid waste and have a plan in this county. Those two entities are for-profit entities. Their motivation is not necessarily, it's not the same motivation we have. Our motivation is to protect the resources of the natural resources of our county. The statute provides for a mechanism for us to cover the cost to protect the community. The proposal that on this ordinance is $1 a ton. I don't, like you said, I don't send out 2,000 pounds to the landfill every year. So my cost is less than $1, right? To protect the integrity of the solid waste system of Ottawa County. This is not a tax from my perspective. It is a user fee. If you don't generate any waste, you want to go to Kent County, Kalamazoo County, no waste, fine, you don't have to pay. I have to pay because I used the service. And it's part of my civic responsibility because I'm helping my local environment, but it's my choice. It's a choice you don't have a lot of choice about, but it's still my choice. It's not a tax. Now, the contract, the 1991 contract, and there's two of them, nobody anticipated that all these years later we would get stuck with a Southwest landfill cleanup, which irks me to this point, it's unbelievable. We're stuck with this. But that landfill should not be, the issue should not be, well, we need to raise money to cover the landfill. The issue is, do we have the authority, do we have the responsibility to take care of the public's environment? Answer, yes. Okay, then go find the money to do it. And we have a mechanism to do it. So we need to be, I think this is a effort. We can't be stupid about it. We need to be prudent. So far, I think we've, in this last, I think we act as a board very prudently. I do really think we do. And we've been able to avoid a lot of things because we are prudent. But we shouldn't be afraid. We should calculate our risk on behalf of the community and make our decisions because we have the responsibility to protect our community's resources. I think this does that. But all that being said, because I've had 9 months of being able to weigh this out. Many of you clearly have not. The public clearly are hearing about it for the first. Credit. They tried to have meetings several times with our administration last summer with our interim process and trying to hire, it just didn't happen. But they were exercising good faith to sit down, and they've clearly have done that apparently. So that's great, because I think they want to be good stewards with us as well. I'm sure they do. They wouldn't be in the business if they didn't. But they also have a different motivation. The fact that this is not a user fee on the landfill. It goes to the pickup companies. Well, this is where there's a problem because they have a conflict. They are the pickup companies. They are the garbage haulers. So they have again a motivated interest in not increasing the fee. They can increase their fee to the customers, like to me, every week, every month, every year, but they're telling us, you guys can't, except for 20 cents, right? Which doesn't even tap into the real cost of our obligation to the public. I think that's totally disingenuous to the county and to the taxpayers when they're giving us, oh, we'll concede 20 cents over what we currently pay. Come on. So anyway, I think there's so much here, be honest with you, Patrick, that I know time's of the essence. I know we're going to be out of the money soon. I have to look at this on the budget, but I think this is a workshop issue, work session issue that we should talk about. We've just only have a few of us here and compared to the board. There's these same questions we're going to spend another 3 hours talking with the whole board about the very same things we've just been spending 3 hours, it seems, on this. I think we should have more talk about it. I think we have some more homework to do about it. We've talked about some stuff. So I would suggest, guys, frankly, that we table this issue as well. Bring it back when maybe we can work it into a work session.
Why don't we pass it so that the next action can go to the full board? We can do a work session, but if we table it here, this body will have to take it up again. And I think the better conversation for it is with the full board, personally.
Let it be tabled there,
Well,
if we do
we
it.
just don't even have to put it on the agenda for the full board meeting. We can just schedule a work session on it. But
Oh.
if we table it here, it has to come back to.
That's a good idea. We don't need to come back here and do it again. What do you think?
That's reasonable.
Yeah, we understand it's controversial but this was the appropriate starting place for the
Yeah.
discussion as a new policy, so, but yeah, we can certainly figure out a time that works to do that, but and as we've discussed, we are continuing to look at alternatives to reducing our costs and also introducing new revenue sources. In fact, we're gonna be having a month from now, a discussion about a proposal to lease the Southwest landfill property, add a revenue to the county. So we'll bring that to you too. And those are the types of things that will offset these costs.
Well, again, I think that we can't lose sight of the fact that we have an obligation to protect the environment and we got to get paid. And right now, what's on the table is we're not getting paid enough. The private sector can increase their costs legitimately, so should we. And so,
Okay, I'd like to get this to a vote, but Commissioner Miedema.
Just another conversation about the next steps. I don't know that we're gonna be ready to vote on it at the next board meeting, and that's why I did think there was some merit there to a work session. And so I guess another possibility would just to be put it on as a discussion item on the board meeting, just so that there's no expectation for an actual vote, so we can continue a conversation about it and see what maybe comes to be. I don't know if there's a way maybe that if you're concerned that it has to go back to planning and policy after it, that's all I'm hearing, is that that's the only reason why you guys don't want to, why you're wanting to vote on it right now is due to time. Is that a fair assessment?
I mean, I think if we have a full board discussion, then the next appropriate place for it to be when we do vote on it would be the full board. I don't see another reason to have us have a discussion on it and then have it go back to planning and policy. So I would just as soon pass it. I don't even think we have to put it on the next full board agenda as an action item. I'd be fine just doing a work session on it. And us passing it doesn't require that it's on the.
Yeah,
the
I just
full
don't feel
agenda.
comfortable with my voice vote. So when I vote for something, to me, I say that as I'm supporting going forward with it. I don't support as is, because I don't think we've fleshed out enough of the information. And so my vote to me is voting in favor of, yeah, we are going down that road. And so I'll be, if that's the case, I'm just letting you guys know at this point in time, I'll be a no vote, because that's where I'm at.
is there another mechanism that, I mean, you're suggesting a mechanism, Jordan? I mean, clearly we need to talk about this more.
Why don't, just a simple suggested amendment to the motion. Right now it says to approve and forward to the Board of Commissioners the solid waste financing ordinance. You could amend that to say to forward to the board the solid waste financing ordinance for further discussion. And whether that be at a board meeting or a work session, it doesn't approve it, but it gets it to that next step for.
But it also doesn't give us the requirement that it has to be on the April
No.
30th agenda.
No, this didn't either, but you're
Yeah,
right.
yeah, I mean, that's, we were,
Can you restate your?
Just, you're
suggestion?
basically taking out the word approve. So to forward to the Board of Commissioners, the solid waste financing ordinance for further discussion.
Yeah, so as long as it doesn't have to come back to planning and policy for approval, then I'm fine with it.
And as you're thinking about it, I would ask you to consider two aspects. One is, do we need a tool? And the second is, what's the amount? You know, that's a separate discussion, and we just threw out $1 million, because it was easy to calculate, 1 million. And that's about what we thought we needed. But that's really a more elaborate discussion, right? I mean, you do need a tool for the new committee to work with. And we don't even have a tool right now.
all you're talking about is the ordinance.
It's the ordinance
Okay.
itself,
Okay.
except for Exhibit A, which is the fee.
Yeah.
And the fee is a more complicated discussion, or it's a separate discussion, right? From the question of whether you have a tool that you can use to collect revenue to pay for these programs. And the sooner we get a tool in place, you know, the better off we are for long-term planning. And then you can calculate how much that levy really ought to be.
That's
Well,
true. You could approve the board could approve the ordinance and then, ask for feedback from the solid waste committee on what the fee amount should be subsequently, but yeah.
And I think there's another meeting that's meeting this week from materials management. True?
I don't know. I'd have to look at the schedule.
Well, we're not likely to get the tool today. I think from a process point of view, we can
Right.
push this from this committee towards the full board with a workshop, work group meeting in between. And then that we can gather some of that additional information from materials and management. I could support a motion with Patrick's amendment at the end of that.
I'll bring the motion, amended motion to forward to the Board of Commissioners, the solid waste financing ordinance for further discussion.
Second.
I don't think we need a roll call.
Okay. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
We got to vote on the actual motion. That was the amendment.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so now voting on the full motion.
Right. As amended.
As amended. Okay.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Right, thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
All right.
All right. All right, investment policy is the next.
I will make a motion to approve and forward to the Board of Commissioners the revised investment policy for a first and second reading.
Or
Simple change that basically introduces intra-fi network deposit as a new investment mechanism for the county to use. That's really all it's materially changing.
Just a reading, there's no action involved with this, is there?
Well, you would be recommending that the revision be made as proposed to the board.
All right, do we have a motion for that?
Already did that.
I'll make the motion to approve and forward to the Board of Commissioners the revised investment policy for first and second reading,
Support.
unless we already did.
We
that.
already
had
did.
that.
That's-
It's already open.
You're in water.
Brain, sorry. I wondered why this smirk on
Doesn't
someone's
matter.
face.
Okay. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We have artificial intelligence policy.
Yeah, and I'm gonna ask Paul Klimas to come up. Paul worked hard on developing this in the evolution of AI, recognizing that our organization was lacking in kind of a umbrella policy that covers. We have a lot of departments that have their own AI policies, but they differ. This is meant to be a comprehensive catch-all, and it's written very generically so that it allows flexibility, but it also gives some kind of guardrails on how AI is used, so.
Perfect.
That's, figured you could add more.
Yeah, the policy tends to, I start off usually by saying, it says, be careful, basically. Generally be careful and qualify the output of any AI tool. Couple of general comments about the policy. The policy attends to general restrictions in terms of copyright, trademarks, privacy, et cetera. Departments may have more detailed departmental policies of their own, specifically health, law enforcement, legal. The county has adopted Microsoft Copilot for general AI assisted activities because it uses Office 365 communications channels, meaning Teams, Outlook, SharePoints, others. However, departments may use other specialized AI tools, again, health, law enforcement, legal. Users should have their manager's approval in using AI tools. We have users that have been using AI tools and their managers did not know that they were using AI tools. And the managers should determine what use cases. There are too many use cases to list. how AI could be used. Because this technology is changing so rapidly and so quickly, we will be reviewing this policy annually.
What was your last statement? I'm sorry.
Because this is changing so quickly, we're going to be reviewing this policy annually.
Great. So we'll want to change that maybe at the bottom of that was one of the things I wanted to suggest, that we would change it to reviewing this policy to once every year versus every 4 years as stated in the review period.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Run it through AI.
Say that again?
Not allowed to yet.
I mean, in some ways, I'm not really being facetious about it. I mean, did you run the policy through AI and see what they thought?
Actually, AI wrote the policy.
Oh, okay. I agree. I'll shut up.
But I did check it and I did modify
There
it
you
in a
go.
couple of
There you
areas.
go.
And so did Regina.
I might have missed this, or it might be captured in another section. But when we post social media, I think Scott uses AI for some of it, and I don't care so much for graphics if they're just kind of clip art type graphics. But I think when photos or videos use AI, I think we maybe should have a policy that there's a disclaimer either in the video or a little watermark or in the actual Facebook post. Because I think you get a lot of people that either think everything is AI or think everything is
Right.
real too. So that might be an area for exploration. I don't know who was working on that.
A constant improvement to the policy.
That's right.
I was wondering if you checked into what any other counties are doing, or if you contacted MAC to see how they're handling this?
Similarly, actually, you know, they have a general policy and then every department seems to have a very refinement specific to their needs, whether it's CGIS or it's HIPAA or it's very specific things.
Was there any info given to you from MAC on that subject, or?
Not specifically from MAC, but from other counties.
Okay.
Have you had a conversation with MAC, or have you looked at them?
No.
Is that something that you feel like might be useful? Just exploring a little bit. I know they've come up with some pretty good things, and there might be something.
We shared this with every department head
Sure.
and we got lots of good feedback.
Great. I'm just talking about the Michigan Association of Counties, just because then they might have the higher overview besides just our own county.
Maybe we can go through it, or
Yeah, we can
Brian or
look
Patrick
and
can
see if
reach out.
we can cross-reference. If they have a model, we can cross-reference the commissioner and see if there's any lacking discrepancies between now and the end of the month.
Okay. Which departments are currently using AI or maybe plan on using it?
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
There are so many.
Yeah.
In so many ways. I mean, health is actively both mental health and public health actively using. So is both our courts significantly. What's planned in sheriff's office in terms of advancements in AI with interactive with the body cams is amazing. And on
think
and on
I'd
and
be
on.
surprised if
We
it
obviously use it aggressively.
Yeah. I guess, and then just another question, how it's currently worded. I think there's a lot of really good stuff in here, and I think it's a really important policy. But one of the things I wondered about, and I think it was a little bit of what Jordan was sharing about, but maybe on the other side of the coin, is does every time a video that's being produced, for example, by communications, need to share, for example, with Shannon in communications every time that it's being utilized? Because currently, that's what's stated here, is that you need to inform your supervisor every single time for every single task. And so I'm wondering if that principle maybe needs to be adjusted a little bit.
Which section are you reading, Commissioner?
One of them was 6D, inform your supervisor when you've used a gen AI tool to help perform a task. And then see if there was anywhere else. Didn't write down I wrote down my general notes, so I'm gonna have to relook. But I just remember doing a first read through it, feeling
Yeah, like it was overburdensome. I think I would interpret that to be a little more lenient in that if you're going to be using it generally, I would want to know. And, but if it's outside of what I guess would be considered the norm, then that would be a conversation we'd have to have. I'm not aware of any, you mentioned that you've seen AI videos that our comms team has produced?
No.
Okay.
No, but I take your point because that's not actually something that you'd then modify. So I've always taken the position that this is an assistant, so it may generate something in terms of like text, but then you read it and you modify it and you take ownership of it. But in the case of text or a photo,
I
it may
just-
generate it completely and then you
and-
use it.
And that's what I'm referring to. I know,
Right.
like, you know, making AI generated content of another individual for like political ads is
Right.
I believe illegal now. So that's more what I'm referring to is I don't care if AI is used to generate text, but I think if, you know,
Right.
we're generating some video that has people in it with
Right.
AI, there should be some form of disclaimer.
Like you shouldn't use
That
it.
policy probably exists somewhere. I'm sure someone has it. It's just an idea. I don't think we have to change anything right
Like
now.
you shouldn't use it to make decisions.
Mhm.
It can assist you, guide you towards something, but you then have to own the decision.
Sure. I mean, I'm talking specifically about, you know, front-facing social media posts and specifically with the type of content that AI can create. Because it can take Phil's face and put it
Yep.
on an NBA player. I don't think we should be doing that.
I can see
We
that.
know it's AI though.
It could take Phil's voice and create
Yeah.
I
True.
think that's
voicemail message from
covered
Phil.
under number 3, prohibited use. Do not use AI for employment decisions, law enforcement determinations without oversight, inputting sensitive data into public AI services, generating harmful or deceptive content, or representing AI content as solely human authored.
Yeah, and if that captures it, then that's fine. I think having,
Commissioner Wenzel would like to get into this.
I just actually checked and it says through its AI Exploratory Committee and partnerships, MAC is working to establish governance readiness, ethical guidelines, and technical baselines for AI use across Michigan's public institutions. It might be worth it just to cross-reference with them and see what they're doing.
Yeah, I'll take a look. I did use the federal guidelines because they've been around for quite some time.
Right. I'm not sure if we're ready to vote yet, but I don't think we properly entered the motion into the record.
Do we need to make any motions to make the change, like at the bottom, as I suggested, that we review this every year versus every 4 years? Do we need to, or is that gonna be cleaned up without a motion?
I missed that. I guess I was out when you talked about that. I think we are across the board trying to move to 4 years, so it aligns with your terms.
I understand, but I think Paul and we all, I think we kind of thought 1 year for this policy because it's changing, because AI is changing so
Oh.
much.
Okay.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, we've got so many in the rotation. We'll just have to make a note to put this one in more.
I'll just make a simple motion then to change, to strike, 4 and years and replace it with the word year.
There isn't a motion on the table currently, so
Oh,
this was not motioned yet. That's what Commissioner Berry was trying to
Oh.
mention.
I will make the motion to approve and forward to the Board of Commissioners the new artificial intelligence policy for a first and second reading, including the change from 4 years to 1 year.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everyone. Remote work policy, could you enter the motion?
Yes, I will make a motion to approve and forward to the Board of Commissioners the new remote work policy for a first and second reading.
What with motion and support? And to explain the policy.
Yeah.
Take it away.
Good afternoon, Chair and Vice Chair and Committee. The county had a remote work policy that was universal across the county back in the COVID days, in the COVID era. Thereafter, just a little of the landscape. Thereafter, the county decided to move away from that policy and go into having departmental policies. And from there, the new county administrator came on and asked myself as the HR director, what are we doing with remote and how is that all working? And we had a conference and discussed that, and it was decided that, hey, I'd like to go back to that, kind of a universal policy, still putting the accountability on the department head and the elected official or the elected official for that department to make decisions on their workforce. However, there was a bit of a culture shift from the COVID days, which many organizations have gone to, where it was really a part of doing business and a very necessary part of doing business to work out of your home and or somewhere else other than a workplace. That's behind us now, and really, as you see, there's I think a pretty paramount statement right at the beginning of that policy that states that the preferred work arrangement for Ottawa County is to reside in a county facility here back at the county. So a little bit of a shift there. We think it's prudent to team building and our opportunity to coalesce around a positive culture. So that kind of set the tone. It did do a 360 around the board looking at departmental policies. I'd asked for what the respective departments are doing currently. Took a look at the old policy, which didn't glean much out of that at different times back in 2000 and such. So it came up with a really similar to the last policy that you saw, more of a universal policy with some guardrails, but really, again, leaving discretion in large form to that department head or that elected official. So just want to give a kind of the landscape of where we're at.
Is there like a hybrid designation for people that do work from home or part-time work from home, or is that just agreements with a supervisor?
Yeah, there really isn't, Chair, as far as, a protocol that we're going to have, 2 days a week or, Tuesday and Thursday, what have you. There really isn't any prescription to that regard. However, the vast majority of departments utilize somewhat of more of a hybrid model than the straight 5 days a week, off campus. There are some doing that, certainly.
Have we, Commissioner Romero?
Just a question on, I'm not sure if the timing of the policy has any correlation with, I heard that certain departments are closing 1 day a week. And I guess I just wondered if there was an update that hasn't been shared yet, if it has anything to do with this remote work policy coming to us. Do you have anything to share on that?
The Commissioner, being completely transparent, I just found out about, I think I know the department you're talking about that has made a decision to close, and I have no real details on it, just actually heard about it, that closed to the public, keeping employees there, if we're talking about the same department, closed to the public facing for 1 day. But no, matter of fact, like I said, just
Okay.
as the HR director, I just heard about that.
Okay, so nothing to do with this.
Perhaps it
policy.
has nothing to do with the employees necessarily, more with the public. Maybe the reason that didn't hit my desk, but no, nothing to do with
Okay,
this policy.
so just to be clear, the county's still planning on operating 5 days a week as normal.
Yes.
Okay,
It's nothing to do with what you're referring to.
okay,
We were working on this well in advance of that.
okay.
And
Just wanted to make sure there wasn't any correlation there.
no,
I think this is a great policy, and I think I personally could really get behind it if we just had maybe one more component, a very small component, but I think it would, from my point of view, beef it up a little bit. So if you went underneath procedure, which is number 4, and you added a letter C to it, and you just simply had a reporting mechanism that said that department heads will submit a report to administration for Board of Commissioner review each year, showing the number of hours worked remotely by department. I think that would, I guess, beef this one up a little bit more for just showcasing like tracking, how many hours are working remote and, having a little bit of accountability there. So that would be a motion. I'm gonna just put that, would make that motion.
Just one response, we did contemplate from, just from an accountability kind of moving away from, again, the old, remote type of situation. But on a more informal way that through the guidance of the administrator and the deputy administrator during their sessions, their one-on-ones and so forth, to kind of keep tabs, kind of check in on that and make sure that we're accountable and that there are reasons why we're doing that. But appreciate the suggestion on the motion.
We've got that as a motion on the floor.
For a second on it?
A second.
Do you happen to have that wording written down at all?
Yeah, I can reread it.
Okay.
Or I can bring it over.
That'd be awesome.
Okay.
Can you reread it one more time?
Yes. So underneath procedure, add a letter C that says reporting. And then it would be followed by department heads will submit a annual report to administration for Board of Commissioner review each year, showing number of hours worked remotely by department.
So why? Why does the Board of Commission need to know who worked and who didn't work remotely? What's the point? Allison, I mean, maybe you could address it because it's your motion, but why does the board need to know that kind of detail? If a board member wants to ask the administrator, hey, how many people are working remotely? Maybe that's a question you could ask. But why do we put it into our former policy and why does the board care?
I would, sorry, I don't want to.
That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at.
Happy to suggest, to elaborate on that. I would say that if you looked over government from local to state to national, I believe that there's a lot of people that are continuing to work remote. And I believe there is, if you look at the research and studies that are done for productivity, you will notice that people who do not work remote, who come to the workplace and that they do by and large, produce more for society. And I think in the government sector that we are part of, I think there is a responsibility that we have is to really make sure that if you're making an observation over time that more and more people are working remote, that needs to be a discussion that we have. I do think it's something that we need to oversee in our roles. I don't need to know an actual person. That's why I said by department.
I think there's merit to it. And in the sense that we're not taking away any authority from the department head to run their department as they see fit, but we are saying, all right, department head, you got to put your stamp of approval on this. I mean, if they can give us that report and say, I'm comfortable with, this many hours worked remote and the work is still getting done, I can put my name behind it, then that's great. I don't have any problem with that.
I think right out of the chute, we start with the general standard for work is to be performed in the Ottawa County office setting. That's the policy direction we're giving our administrator. The administrator is going to give that to the department heads. This isn't like things like Washington get very disconnected. I don't think our county government's as disconnected as federal government is with its workforce. I just don't feel like it's necessary, and it feels like micromanaging to me. So I'd probably be against that. But I agree with what you're saying. People are more effective in the office. There's better culture issues. There's better team building. being in the office, a lot of good reasons to be in the office. I want to encourage that, but I don't think we need to track that.
It was intended, it's written to allow the department head flexibility without tying their hands. And there is a section under procedure, it does allow the department head to require employees to provide reports, updates for work performed. So if there are situations where it feels it may be being abused, that gives that department head the ability to talk to me and say, hey, we need to look into this. But there is departments, equalization, for example, they're entirely remote. And I mean, very rarely are they in the office because they're out in the field or they're working in the partner jurisdictions that they're serving as assessors in. So you're gonna have a myriad of, some are very heavy remote, some are more of a flexibility model, but the point is, this is as Scott said, this is really a culture change, as many organizations are saying, it's a return to work call. That's the expectation, not the norm anymore, but there's still flexibility built in as long as it's not abused.
Let's flesh that out a little bit. Field work is different than remote work.
Well, we have people that are working remote in other county or city offices, city halls throughout the county that aren't in the county building. I
Sure, but is that, you're considering that people who work out in the field,
I consider it as if their place of work is not in a county facility, then that's remote work.
okay, I definitely did not see it that way, how it was addressed in this policy. Remote work to me is a much different situation in a case-by-case scenario, such as some of the things that were, I don't think your example was listed in here, and that's a pretty big, I think, difference.
I'd like to piggyback off Jim. I think our administration's more than capable. That's why we hired them. That's why we rely on them. That's why we put our trust and faith in them to run this program. And I think they'll be very efficient about how they do it. So I will vote yes for this. Or no on your motion.
Should we vote on the amendment?
Yeah, so take a vote on the amendment first. That read again, are we okay with it?
Mr. Kyers,
No.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mr. Georgezma,
Yes.
Mr. Teeples,
No.
Mr. Barry,
No.
motion fails.
Right, then going to the full motion as was introduced.
You want a roll call for that one too? Okay. Mr. Georgezma,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel, Mr. Kyers,
Yes.
Mr. Teeples.
Yes.
Mr. Barry,
Yes,
motion passes.
thank you. Our last action request has to do with the legal services policy.
I'll make a motion to approve and forward to the Board of Commissioners the revised legal services policy for first and second reading.
Okay, so this is on piggybacking on the discussion that we had at the last regular meeting where we essentially created the Department of Legal Services and authorized the creation of that department head position. So this effectively modifies the legal services policy to recognize that restructuring and then various red line changes throughout to accompany that. So Doug and I are happy to answer any questions or comments you may have on the proposed language.
I'll start, if you don't mind. So I've talked with both Doug and Patrick about this. I have issues. I mean, I think it's really important policy to have, but I have issues with how it's, with some of the stuff in it. I think there's some redundancy in the language that can be cleaned up. I think there's some clarification issues, like what is a quasi-criminal activity? What does that mean? And I also think that in the issue about where we need to look at our bylaws about when a commissioner acts unethically or where indemnification comes in, we need to bring that into this possible exception. clause that we have in here as well. So I think this work needs a little bit more work. And I'm not in a position right this second to verbally suggest it. If there's no urgency in it,
There's no urgency. No, I mean, we're going to be operating under this new structure once this person is hired. The position is posted through the end of April. So it's pretty unlikely that we'd have anyone seated before mid-May to late May. So that will give us another opportunity at a committee meeting to work through. It'd be helpful if we could get your questions, thoughts, concerns on the language, and then we can work on some draft amendments in the interim.
yeah, of course. So I'll make a motion to table this.
Support.
Or one thing that came up during finance,
Actually, you're supposed to go right to a vote per table.
Yeah.
yeah, right.
No discussion on it, a motion to table. All in, I'm sorry, Rachel, on a table, is that a roll call vote or?
Doesn't matter.
Okay, all in favor of tabling, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Thank you.
I would like to hear your comment now.
Well, I was just gonna say that Commissioner Zylstra was really confused about the budgetary request for Corporation Council. And it occurs to me that whoever sits in this chair should be able each year to answer a basic question from any of you. How much did the county spend last year on legal services? And trying to make sure that this person is aware of each department that may have their own counsel and how much they spent enables that person to answer that very basic question, which you should all be entitled to and you should be monitoring. Because you can spend a lot of money on legal services. And right now, we don't have anyone that's really tasked with answering that question succinctly for you. So that's one of the things I'm going to look at in the revision, just to make sure that you've got that capability.
Yeah, if that person's coordinating all legal services, they should be able to answer that question.
And it does say that in here right now, that it all funnels through, but yeah.
All right.
On that,
Okay.
moving along the agenda to Health and Human Services updates and veterans. Due to time constraints, our speakers had to excuse themselves, so we will postpone their presentations until a later time to be determined. And my apologies, other business kind of put us way behind schedule here. Those are important updates, and we look forward to hearing them, and we'll get that rescheduled as soon as possible. Likewise, with the discussion items, our primary presenters had time constraints as well, and Norman Kopla and Rich Houtman, we will have them back. Patrick, would that be for our full board meeting then?
The Consumers Energy update. With regard to the resolution for public hearing, we will confirm that Consumers is doing that. And if for some reason that hasn't been requested, I'm assuming the board would like to have a discussion about entertaining its own motion to schedule a public request, a public hearing, and we can make that happen at the April 30th agenda.
Okay, but they still had a presentation, just an update.
Yeah, that will probably come back next month at your next planning and policy.
Oh, okay, all right. Do we want to have discussion though, Commissioner Mead?
Just a brief one. I don't think there's any harm unless anyone can share reason why not. Why we shouldn't have a resolution ready to be voted on that just shows that our board supports a public hearing at the Board of Commissioner meeting. And so I would love this board to just give that authority to Patrick to draft up a resolution so that we can vote on something. It doesn't matter if Consumers is also doing a resolution or is requesting it. I think it just shows that we support that they want to do that. So I think it can be worded in a way that doesn't pit us against them. It's just supporting the concept of a public hearing.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yes.
yeah, as I understand that, it's a request to the Environmental Protection Agency to host,
Yeah, and Eagle and EPA together. They do them together to avoid confusion, but yeah. I just was trying to avoid redundancy, but if I understand that request, and we can be prepared to have that for you.
Well, frankly, I'm not sure I support a resolution like that. But I think we should talk about it. If we're going to get to
I
that
don't think
point.
we're supporting the resolution, just the preparation of a resolution.
Yeah, so curious what that resolution would even, what direction you have to draft one. Would it be, yes, we support consumers' energy desire for a public hearing? Is that what the resolution would say?
Wouldn't it
It-
just say that we are requesting a public hearing? It could be a very simple resolution.
That's different. I mean, that's a different.
That's how I interpreted.
Yeah, I don't anticipate lots of language
Yeah.
about going into the merits of the actual issue. I just want to have a resolution from my perspective, just asking for a public hearing.
I think if it's narrow, I can get there, but I tend to agree with John that I don't necessarily think we should wade into these waters. I mean, this is essentially, we have no control over this process whatsoever. It doesn't matter what we say. And to that point, I mean, we've made this point for the last year that we shouldn't really be engaging in topics that, the federal government, it has clear purview on and the state government has clear purview on. Do I think saying we think there should be a public hearing is bad? No, because I think there should be a public hearing. But I just don't know. I think we can put it on the agenda. That doesn't necessarily mean I'll support
I
it.
guess I'm not sure. Can you elaborate on that? Because it said even in consumers, it said that anyone can request a public hearing. We could reach out. So why wouldn't we utilize our voice as a board?
As your voice as an individual commissioner, I'd say it's not common and it's not a function that have delegated authority to do to ask for that. I mean, as an individual person, you can ask for it. That was what I was given to understand, that if we asked for a public hearing, it would be given the same weight as any other individual asking for a public hearing. It's just one person.
Do you know, Brian, do you know if that's the case? I know you've been working on this a little bit.
In preparing sample motion and sample resolutions, we've been running with the assumption that individual voices will be actively considered by the EPA to state whether or not a local unit of government will have more weight in that consideration. I cannot answer that.
Just because because in your research, you weren't able to find that, or you just haven't got to that point, actually asking that question?
I did not ask that specific question.
Okay.
Again, I think we can have a discussion about it.
Yeah. Well, why don't we do this? We'll be prepared with a resolution for the 30th, and you guys can determine what action you want to take. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I would just like to add, I've spent a pretty good amount of time last week on this issue with Brian and talked to lots of people, tried to get lots of input on folks. By and large, I think Consumers has a prudent, sensible plan. I like it better than what they're currently doing with the byproduct from the burnt coal and diluting it and putting it back into Lake Michigan. But I think there's a problem that community hasn't been fully brought up to speed with what this is. I think people were kind of caught off guard with it. I think Campbell is a point of high interest. I think groundwater is a point of high interest, and Lake Michigan is a point of high interest to people across Ottawa County. So that's why Jordan, I agree with you. I think your points of view, there are areas that we should be very gentle or discriminate about what we want to involve ourselves in. But I can see we have a voice in this.
What you could do, potentially, since EPA doesn't have an office here. Consumers doesn't really have an office here. We could offer our big conference room as the place for the public hearing.
That's a great idea.
It's a great idea.
Absolutely do.
Gesture on top of it.
All right. Any other comments on that? Okay. We're back to public comment. Thank you for your patience.
Dan Zimmer, Port Sheldon Township. Now is not the time for the board to look for an off-ramp and take spectator seats on this injection well project. Requesting a public hearing doesn't obligate you to make a comment. All it does is give the public a platform to speak. I live about a quarter mile due east of Consumer Energy Fly Ash Disposal Landfill. There is a history that needs to be told. The year is 1993, and Consumers Energy was running out of disposal area on their 269-acre disposal site. 135 acres needed rezoning. Roads needed to be abandoned. The method then was water flush slurry system that transported ash to the unlined retention ponds. The water returned to aquifer and run off to the Pigeon River. I'm told then it was about 1 million gallons a day. We were told at the time, fly ash is as safe as sand. That is not true. Fly ash is known to contain heavy metals, arsenic, chromium, mercury, lead, to name a few. The J.H. Campbell site contamination is known to exist. A group of concerned citizens called for environmental responsibility. Consumers stopped water slurry handling and started air transfer system, pug mill processing, and disposing fly ash in double-lined landfill cells. The takeaway is consumers wanted to grandfather old practices. The powers that be at the time said a public hearing was a delay tactic. We had to fight hard and were successful, putting a referendum on the Port Sheldon Township ballot, November 2, 1993. This board should go on the record to request a public hearing. The injection well permits deserve transparency, public input, and to test the best practices Consumers Energy has outlined. Marketing fly ash to the public should be data-driven. Per a Consumers Energy explanation of what is in the wastewater and is it hazardous. They say, the wastewater is primarily liquid that percolates through and has picked up certain constituents from the coal ash. The wastewater is much like coffee, water that percolated down through the ground coffee. No mention that the certain constituents are the heavy metals contained in fly ash.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Anyone online? Oh,
Hi, Chantal Martineau, Park Township. I just wanted to say that I find it a little surprising that you don't think that it's your place as a board to request a public hearing or to contact the Environmental Protection Agency in regards to this action by the Campbell plant when you didn't have any trouble contacting them to request that the government keep the plant open. And also I'd like to note that the hearing is not just with the EPA, it's also with Eagle State Agency, and I think as a local unit of government that is directly below the state, that you do have a voice in requesting a hearing with the state. Thank you.
right. No one online? No one else in the audience? This meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Yeah.